The man of tomorrow is here. It is time for that Wednesday Q&A, and I'm telling you, I'm going to try and make this one jam-packed. Like I'm going to try and fit in as much as I possibly can. In fact, I did something that I haven't been doing it every week, but something that I like to do on certain weeks is I will, in the Sovereign Tech Facebook Uncensored group, I like to ask, hey, I'm about to do the Wednesday Q&A. Do you have any questions you want me to get into? Because I know a lot of people there are patrons. Not all of them. It's not a patron-only perk, and I largely intend for that group to never be such a thing. But anyway, got some great questions asked through that, and so I will be getting into those. But I have some other ones too. So like I said, I'm going to try and get through them as much as I can. Actually, some really interesting ones that were asked in the Facebook group there. But first off, and I'm not going to waste any time. Let's just get right into it. First off, a question that I get asked over and over and over again, and that, like, I get it asked so often that I'll answer it maybe once every 6 months or something, and then, I'll let it sit and, or either I'll answer it again in 6 months, or if something comes up that I find particularly interesting with this question, I will mention it. I'll just break in and, even though it might have been asked months ago, and I'll break in with it now. Because usually I despise most of the projects that come out of this technology. Of course, the technology I'm talking about is blockchain technology. Look, I don't hate them all. I've said it over and over and over again. Okay, Litecoin, Bitcoin, Zcash. I'm a fan of all three of those. Those are three that I really, I don't have any technical issues with. I don't, my scam radar doesn't go off, obviously, that I have a lot of confidence in those three. Now, I want to add one more to the list, but this one comes with a bit of risk because it is a very new, it's fairly new, is in the order of months. Now, you can say after a month, cryptocurrency is old hat after a month. I know that's a way of thinking within the blockchain space, but this is one that I find to be absolutely fascinating, and I'm going to explain why. And again, it is Zencash. I mentioned it in the Facebook group. I said that, look, this is a bit of a risk, but if you're looking for something that's exciting that you can buy into kind of early, here's something that you can buy into kind of early, And I mean, already one Zen, okay, which is, the coin of Zencash, one unit, one Zen is already at like $8 on average. It's about $8 a coin, $8 a Zen, $8 a Zencash, however you want to say that. I am excited about this, and I'll explain why. So a few reasons, some of which I am going to describe from an anonymous inside track, and I'm not going to reveal names or the where or how that I've heard some of this stuff, but I want to mention it to you anyway. And you can take it. I mean, I like to think that my reputation as far as the recommendation of altcoins and cryptocurrencies in general is not sparkling as in I'm always right, but sparkling as in I don't engage in pump and dumps. Okay, I don't talk about the flavor of the month. I make it a point to not talk about blockchain technologies because there's so many goddamn things. I rip apart even ICOs that the average person, or not the average, but that a lot of people in the tech journalist space and wherever else don't think is horrendous. Think like Brave, okay, and all this. I rip on those to shreds. Like I don't get bought out. I don't talk about things that I don't consider to be absolutely, legitimate, worthwhile, and sound and solid. Okay. I hope my reputation stands as far as that goes. So, and as some very kind Sovereign Tech listeners have called me the Warren Buffett of crypto. Well, let's talk about Zencash here. So take that for what you will. Okay. That I, again, I like to think I never engage in pump and dumps. Have I ever been a part of one and it was unwitting? I guess maybe there's a possibility that I said something somewhere sometime, but anyway, I don't recall that, and I don't even know what it would be. Like, I don't even have a clue what it would be. So, all right. So let's get into Zencash here. Zencash is Well, let me start by saying this. I've had a lot of people, and I've been trying to get somebody on because I know some listeners have, and patrons, and rightfully so, have had concerns around Zcash in particular, which I am a fan of. And they have concerns around trusted setup. They have concerns around, other certain aspects of it. Maybe they don't like the 20% founders fee, where like 20% of everything mined goes back to these, what is it, the Zero Cash Electric Company, or I love the name for that, but where it goes back to them to fund it. Maybe they don't like that. There's a few reasons where people have concerns around Zcash, and I appreciate that. Okay. I've been trying to get somebody on to really be able to address them at a higher level than what I would do. I am largely satisfied with my recommendations of these things, but I want to be sensitive to that. Okay. Now, when I say that I support Zcash, really, and I've said this before on Patreon episodes and on Sovereign Tech Prime, the main thing I'm excited about is the genuine scientific breakthrough in cryptography that is zero knowledge proofs. And it is a breakthrough straight up. And that's what excites me, okay? And Zcash, the company, Zuko and all them, are absolutely funding, partly through that founders fee, more development in this area and more development in cryptography and its application to blockchains and, even economic models and all the rest. I love hearing that. I love that that's going on. Okay, I want to be very clear about that. But my main thing that I support is zero knowledge proofs because I think this is a huge part of the future. We don't get that many scientific breakthroughs. Okay, really, like that's the best term to describe it. We don't get that many of those in cryptography, generally. So this is an exciting technology that I want to see flourish. Okay, now Zencash, not Zcash, but Zencash uses the same zero knowledge proofs, ZK snarks, which is what it's specifically called. Because there's kind of multiple zero knowledge proof technologies, but ZK snarks is sort of the main one being developed by Zcash. They use that technology. Okay, now there is the concern about the trusted setup. Here's inside track point number one. The people at Zencash are aware of that. Like they know that that's a problem. They understand the concerns around it, and they themselves would like to fund ways to get around, the trusted setup and all this stuff. So there's an awareness there. Okay. So this is a technology using zero knowledge proofs. Already I feel positive towards it. It's not the only one, right? There's Z Classic. Zcoin is a different situation, but as far as using ZK snarks, you have more or less the big three are Zencash, Z Classic, what did I say? Zcash, Z Classic, and Zencash. This is going to be tough with all these Z's. But anyway, so Zencash is, and as it stands right now, Zencash is very much a clone of Zcash. The differentiators aren't necessarily in play yet. Okay, but two things going for Zencash. One is the stated goals of what they're doing. And I know some of these projects are already in beta and may be coming out soon. So if you are looking to, again, I'm not giving you necessarily investment advice. I am not all right, legal disclaimer. Should I just say that? Can I just say that? Does that make it good enough? Legal disclaimer or some kind of whatever. There, I said legal disclaimer. So legal disclaimer of risk. Okay. I am aware that there are tests. So what Zencash is trying to do is they're trying to be Zcash, but they're trying to sort of be the Dash of Zcash, where they are a platform and not just a currency. Okay, as to where Zcash largely right now, and there's nothing wrong with this, it's not a negative by any means, is just a cryptocurrency. Okay, so even though you can do a couple little other things with it. So anyway, Zencash is trying to be a sort of a publishing platform. They're trying to be a communications platform where you're using zero knowledge proofs for encrypted communications and all this. Not to say Zcash can't do this, but Zencash is already working on it and they're moving forward, and they're making very nice GUIs, okay, so that everybody can kind of use this, and they are aimed at, as to where Zcash is more aimed at enterprise, the enterprise market. Okay. Zencash is looking more towards end user and developing markets and all this stuff. Okay. So now Zencash is they already have, like, their chat apps are in development right now, and I've heard that people are using them, and it's pretty impressive just how easy they are to use. They also have, kind of like how Dash has a masternode system, which I understand the concerns around those. I've talked about them recently when I was asked a question about, do I have any concerns around Dash? I'm aware of the concerns around that. Zencash is doing something similar called secure nodes, which those are in beta right now. Will probably be in by the end of the month. There's a lot of things going on behind the scenes that within the next month is going to make Zencash, in my opinion, a very, very serious player. Okay, so this is something that, again, I'm recommending keeping your eye on. If you want to put money into it, put money into it. I've invested into it. I will tell you that straight up. So, I mean, and there are other announcements coming. I'm not going to necessarily reveal a lot of those. I'm just saying that I have some degree of information that, huge shit you can't guarantee anything in this life. Well, almost anything, but huge shit's coming with this, and it's really, it is something I'm very excited about. Now, the second point I wanted to get into is the team. Okay, I have talked to these guys and gals, and these are people who fucking get it. If you're a libertarian, these are people who, like, literally, they are trying to reach out to the Free State Project libertarian, the Porkfest libertarians, the anarchists, the whole thing. The head guy, Rob, is an anarchist. I mean, this is, they get the ideology. You can read the white paper, okay? I put a link in the show notes for the website, zensystem.io. You can read the white paper. It's a beautiful white paper because it gets into the economics. It gets into the philosophical. It explains why this is important, blah, blah, blah. These guys have no problem being irreverent and, being anti-government, the whole thing. That's another part that excites me, which is even better, in my opinion, than Zcash. I know Zcash kind of has these attitudes, and I know that they're trying to appeal to enterprise because that's where the money is. And, you can't take, like, I kind of get it that you can't take that hard anarchist tact. Okay, which I don't think Zuko's an anarchist, but you can't take that hard anarchist tack with the kind of the customers that Zcash is trying to get out to, even though anarchists can totally use their technology and use it to great effect. Okay, but Zencash, no, there's no problem. Talk to them. They are as anarchists as they come, and they'll talk anarchism with you night and day. They'll talk libertarians. I mean, just alone that they know that, because I've said this for years. I said it on Free Talk Live. I said it on Sovereign Tech. I've said it on Sex and Science Hour. I said it on every show. Anytime anybody asks me about Bitcoin, I said the reason Bitcoin actually had stability and grew and is where it is today. Yes, it's an amazing technology, but it did so because of liberty-minded people, that grassroots movement of understanding why they needed it, and they got passionate about it. Okay. And I said that if a cryptocurrency is ever going to get taken seriously, they have to go the same route, or you do what Zcash does and you just go for enterprise. Okay. You go one of those two, and they are, I mean, I think that's part of the reason Dash has held on and has been so successful. They went after the same crowd, and I think Zencash is doing the same thing. Okay. And that's the crowd to get, because they're the people that need this technology. Everybody else can fucking use PayPal. Who gives a shit? Okay. So I think you have the right attitude, you have the right technology, and you have some interesting differentiating ideas, which to me makes this a crypto that I'm going to mention around. Okay, it's right up there. I know. There's a lot of people that are fans of Monero. I understand that. This sits in that wheelhouse. These are the privacy coins. That's kind of the new term going around. Even though I know Zuko tweeted and said, "We're not a privacy coin." He's like, "Well, yeah, I mean we are, but we're not just a privacy coin." Like, I understand that point. Get what people are fucking saying when they call it a privacy coin. Like, Zcash, come on, just accept it. Okay. But anyway, this is, and these are the ones that you want to keep an eye out for, where privacy, security, anonymity, all that is really baked in. Okay. And with Zencash, it's there. So it's just something. Hey, look, if you've got holdings in Zcash, I'm not saying take them out of Zcash and go to Zencash. Do both. There's no reason. And that's the other beautiful thing too, is I know the developers for Zencash, they are so on board with, they want Monero to exist. They want Dash to exist. They want Zcash to exist. They want Bitcoin to exist. They don't want to be like, I mean, maybe in their, wild fantasies, they want to be the dominant coin, but they don't care if all the other ones exist. And that's such a great attitude to fucking have, because so many people are like, oh, no, we can only have the one. We don't need the others. We just want the one, blah, blah, blah. And it just gets crazy. So, or that way of thinking, in my opinion, gets crazy, because as I've always said, in freer markets, not that we may never have a worldwide freed market, okay, but in freer markets, you don't have less currencies, you have more. We know that. There is historical precedent for that fact. Okay, so good, have a bunch of them. This is one of the few that in my book is okay. And it's at a very early buying price, in my opinion. So if it's something you're interested in, there you go. You're a patron. You just got, a degree of an inside track on that. And that's all I've got to say about Zencash. If you have other questions, you can ask me. Yep. If you have concerns about the way that ZK Snarks is set up, those concerns still would apply to everything that's going on with Zencash. So if you have those concerns, don't do it. Just don't do it. That's okay. I'm really not insulting you. I appreciate, I say this, look, this is the default position people should have with any blockchain technology, perhaps outside of Bitcoin, and even within the kind of the Bitcoin Civil War triad that's sort of going on right now. Okay, the default position should be absolute skepticism. Should be that not just skepticism, but that it's a scam. I'm saying I think this one isn't. That Zencash is not, but that is the default position to have. And if you have that about Zencash, hey, fine. That's okay. I understand. So anyway, let's get on to another question. This is just a quick one. Did you notice Acer released the new Chromebook 15? All right. Well, okay. So the question is basically, are Chromebooks still viable? Yes. Okay. So let's caveat, or let's deep dive just for this. Should only take a couple minutes to answer, but let's deep dive a little bit into this. Okay, so yeah, because this one's referencing a new Chromebook that can run the Google Play Store. Okay, well that makes it a little more usable, right? Because you have so many Android apps that, and whether depend how people feel about the actual functionality of Android apps and the practicality of Android apps, that is personal taste across the board. That is totally subjective, so that's up to you. Okay, if you feel that it's enough for you, or it's not enough for you, or it's buggy, whatever, that's your call. Okay, if you like Android apps, and I don't blame you, go for it. Okay, so now what's happening in the abstract of technological privacy today? Okay, what in many ways it's coming down to, if you need to do business in the real world, okay, is you sort of have to choose your company right now. You don't have to, okay? And if you create your own company, maybe you don't have to bother with this. And, you can do everything on Linux and on your own little NAS, and, you can have, use Sandstorm or something and have a great time. Okay, I'm not saying you have to do this. I guess for shorthand, I'm saying you have to choose between, you're pretty much choosing between, I guess maybe Amazon could be a choice, which, by the way, I'll probably talk about it this week on Sovereign Tech Prime, but that Amazon and Cortana a union going on right now where they're going to work together, talk to each other, quote unquote. That's a very interesting thing to discuss. You choose kind of between Amazon, Microsoft, Google, Apple, and that's more or less it. Maybe Dropbox, so you could count on that. I don't know, but you're effectively at some point Dropbox shouldn't really count on that. You're going to trust, because of the combination of hardware that you buy and the software services that either come stock or that you put on there. You are going to be trusting one of those tech giants with a lot of your data, with the bulk of your data. And you sort of don't have a choice if you are doing business in the everyday world. Okay. So you choose one, and you want to play the game of lesser of evils. Okay, then you play that game. Do you think Microsoft is the least of all evils? Then you're, knee deep in Microsoft's ecosystem. Also keep in mind that, account minimalism is important. You have as few accounts as is humanly possible, and you download as little software as humanly possible. Okay, so if you decide that Microsoft is going to be your main account where the bulk of your digital life resides, well then no, Chromebooks is not a good idea. then it's not viable, and you're just going to stick with Windows 10 machines pretty much. I mean, maybe you could run with a Linux thing. I mean, because Microsoft has made huge strides of working with the Linux community. In fact, Microsoft, I believe now, is the number one provider of open source software in the world. And they are the number one developer and supporters of open source software in the world. So, there's something to be said for that, certainly. But, or maybe you're an Apple person. You use Mac OS, you have an iPhone and all this stuff. Well, then, keep all your shit with Apple. That way you don't have to have a bunch of different accounts, and that way you're not installing a bunch of bullshit software. In that case, a Chromebook is also not for you. However, if Google, Alphabet/Google, is the company where you hang your hat, is the account, your Google account is incredibly important to you. You do a lot with Google Docs, Google Drive, whatever, Google Play Music. I mean, you're just like, you are, for whatever reasons, stuck inside of Google's ecosystem. Then, yeah, a Chromebook is a great idea because, Chromebooks are still awesome for preventing, your run-of-the-mill malicious hacker, again, not state actor, okay, but your run-of-the-mill malicious hacker, and protecting you from that. I mean, they're great. They're very secure platforms. They're just not secure from Google. And, since they're not secure from Google, they're not really secure from a nation state. So that's the perspective you have to have, is that if you're going to hang your hat with some company and the hat that you're hanging it with happens to be Google, then yeah, Chromebooks are totally valid. I mean, and you can do, as far as securing things from everybody besides Google and nation states, you can do tremendous shit with a Chromebook. I mean, that can be, just an amazing secure, very secure device. You could run, you can run the Signal app on there. You could run Mailvelope and have PGP. You can run Telegram on there. You can run Line. All these secure messaging you can do. You can be PGPing your emails. The drive is automatically encrypted anyway, just because of the nature of Chrome OS. I mean, it's a very impressive package. There's a reason years ago that I was so excited about them. Okay, but if your Google account is not your, bread and butter, it's not your primary way of interacting, or that's not where, you have everything kind of sit, then no, I don't think it's a worthwhile platform to get involved in, because you're just opening stuff up to another company that you don't trust. Like, I don't trust Google, so I try not to use their services as much as I can, to keep it from getting to them. But it's more or less, you are always mitigating between these tech giants. Which one do you trust the most? That's kind of what privacy average privacy for the average person, and even for the technically inclined, has come down to which company do you trust, or do you not trust least, I guess. So that's your choice. So yeah, Chromebooks can still be totally valid. They can also be very nice if you can actually, just use, because it's generally cheap hardware, inexpensive, not cheap, but inexpensive hardware, and you can install Linux on it, and and away you go. But I'm really not recommending a Chromebook. I'm just saying that, it can be, it still can be a valid platform, especially if you're stuck in Google's ecosystem, and you can do a lot of very interesting things with it. So anyway, especially now that you can run Android apps in it. So let's see. All right, next question. So this is a sequel to a question that was asked to me last week, which was, do I read more than one book at a time? And I described quickly and just said, no, I'll read one fiction book, and then I'll read I read my fiction books generally through an audiobook, so I listen to them. And then nonfiction books I actually, read, with my eyes, the old-fashioned way. So then the person said, well, they meant, they kind of clarified their question, saying, well, they were wondering more, do I read multiple books at a time? As in, will I read one book one week, you're part of a book one week, and then the next week I'll read a different book, or that I'll read 3 or 4 different maybe nonfiction books, sort of in conjunction, at the same time. Obviously the person doesn't, before somebody cracks a joke, obviously the person doesn't mean, do I hold 4 books in front of my eyes and I read all of them at once? No, of course, and they didn't mean that. I'm just cutting the joke off at the pass. Yeah, no, I am one of those people that, unless there's something, unless I'm doing some kind of research and I have to cross-reference or whatever, I am one of those people. I'm a total completionist. I have to I will read an entire book before I move on to the next one. Other than the caveat, like I said, of, where I'm listening to an audiobook and I'm reading one book. So in that sense, like I said last week, I am reading two books at the same time. But otherwise, no, I finish one because, the thing with books, just to explain why, in my opinion, the thing with books is that a book is giving you an entire picture. Okay. And you want to be very conscious of the fact that it is giving you a singular picture. And I think it's the real advantage of books in that it's not like, newspapers or magazines magazines can kind of be, can sort of be a singular whole, or like websites where there's constant updates or where they're changing the story and all this. Books, usually great books or good books or normal books anyway, none of this is, horseshit political stuff. That usually all comes out after some kind of presidential election. But like, your average book is something that generally takes years to write, and it is a set conglomerate of those years. Like it is a compilation. It is a set compilation of those years. It is giving you a whole picture. And I think cutting off that picture at any point keeps you from seeing the entire picture, in my opinion. So no, it's one book and I finish that book and then that's the end of it. Then I move on to the next book. So yeah, one book at a time for me. I hope that explains that. Anyway, next question. Let's see. So let's get in. Oh, Jesus Christ. Why no emoji movie review yet? You emoticon shill. Yes, I am an emoticon shill. I will not, as a point of pride, I won't watch that movie. I know there's those movies, right, where like they're so bad you have to see them to know why they're bad. No, this isn't even one of those. This is just one of those ones where you just completely ignore it. And I am getting a paycheck from the ASCII Art Foundation to keep me from doing it. So anyway, okay. So someone, or actually not someone, Daryl W. Perry sent in a story from antiwar.com, which of course I'm a huge supporter of. Angela Keaton, look, between her and Judge Andrew Napolitano, they are the reason I am the anarchist you see before you today. I mean, Judge Andrew Napolitano cleared my mind of, the concept that, that you don't need like defense forces and, and militaries and all this different stuff. Angela Keaton, I remember the first time I saw her, she was actually on Judge Knapp's show, Freedom Watch. She came on, looked amazing. She's wearing triple black and all this stuff and had this leather jacket on, and she was just talking, and she was brilliant. She was absolutely brilliant, and she was just hammering foreign policy. And this would have been, I guess this would have been 2010, 2011, somewhere around there. And man, like she cleared the cobwebs. I don't even know if I've hung out with her. I've talked with her, a few times. I don't even know if she knows just how much like she helped me, but, on my path. But anyway, so let's see. Yeah, so this is from antiwar.com. I'll read a bit of the story and then we'll, I'll break it down and get into it. And then we have more fun questions to get into. Apple purges all Iranian apps from iPhones, citing U.S. sanctions. So I'll read it here. Despite not having any stores in the country, Apple's iPhone has about 11% of the Iranian cell phone market. With that comes a wide array of applications, and while Apple didn't have an Iranian app store, developers have long just put their apps for the Iranian market elsewhere, meaning that they would put it in the app store and, people would get their hands on it, using a VPN or whatever the fuck they needed to do. That's reading on. That seems to have come to an end this week, with Apple beginning a crackdown on all Iranian applications for the iPhone, claiming that any apps for the market are in violation of U.S. sanctions against Iran. This has shut down a number of key applications, including food delivery services and an Iranian Uber equivalent. The legal claim is uncertain. Google doesn't discriminate against Iranian applications for its Android operating system, and Samsung, a manufacturer of such phones, has a major store inside Iran. Locals are starting an online campaign to try to bring awareness to what Apple is doing and to encourage them to stop. In 2013, the U.S. explicitly ended its technology export ban on Iran, and specifically to encourage information sharing applications getting into the country. At the time, State Department officials said this effectively legalized the export of iPhones to Iran, though Apple still refused to do so. This might become an uncomfortable situation for Apple in the end. In 2012, an Apple store garnered controversy in the U.S. when they refused to sell an iPad tablet to a U.S. citizen. The clerk of an Apple store identified as being ethnic Iranian, claiming that the sanctions forbade sales of technology even to American citizens of Iranian origin. Holy fucking shit. Let me stop for a second. That is the epitome of a mindless fucking liberal. And oh yeah, I am going to generalize that an Apple user is a fucking liberal. Because, or at least an Apple store worker certainly is. I mean, just to be that level of hipster. Anyway, this is likely to encourage Iranians to try to find a way around these new restrictions, and while in the long run they might be switching to a competing phone company that doesn't overtly discriminate against them, it's likely there will be efforts to sideload Iranian applications to end users in that country. So that is going to be a tall order, because jailbreaking iPhones is not necessarily as easy as it once was. It is a very risky proposition, and I cannot, even just the ability to get an iPhone in Iran, to double down on the risk of that by jailbreaking it, yeah, I don't know. I don't know how well exactly that's going to work. So let's talk about this. Let's break this down as far as what's going on with it. And there are some interesting things to say, or to glean, I should say, from it. I wouldn't begin to claim that I'm interesting. So President Trump, sorry. He, as I understand, now I know some of there's sanctions that were lifted, there's sanctions that were set up, during the Obama administration. During the Trump administration, he has absolutely doubled down on, no, you're not going to send stuff to Iran. Now, across the board, anarchists and, well, it was supposed to be libertarians, but I guess not anymore, said this is ridiculous. Why, none of these sanctions aren't going to hurt the government at all. It's just going to hurt the citizens. And like when the export ban was lifted, it was lifted because it would allow for information to get into Iran and, potentially maybe free the minds of the people there. I mean, even parts of the government recognize this. Now, understand that, as we say often on Sovereign Tech, look, there's not just one U.S. government. Yes, there's technically one U.S. government according to the U.S. Constitution, okay? But there's a multitude of U.S., like there's a bunch of different, and I don't mean Republican, Democrat. I mean, there are a bunch of different factions within the U.S. government structure, okay, that have disagreeing viewpoints, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it doesn't sound conspiratorial to anybody because, again, they would just instantly think, well, yeah, there's Republicans and Democrats. But I'm saying it goes much further than that. Okay. In fact, if we're to believe some of the new, what is it called, Express Lane, that was the new leaks from WikiLeaks that were part of Vault 7, that shows how the CIA was putting Trojans in software that was meant to interact between the NSA and the CIA and the FBI. That's because, like I said, when we did the entire Vault 7 episode on Sovereign Tech Prime, they are not on the same team. Now, if we're to believe these, the Express Lane leaks, of course, and I understand skepticism on those, but if they're true, it proves my point that, the CIA is in competition, is a separate, not just a separate organization, but a separate ideology working for different masters, whatever, than the NSA is. And the NSA is working for, a different overall organization or ideology than the CIA is, etc. Okay? So you have, competing aspects of this, but there are obviously parts of the U.S. government that recognize the revolutionary, and if it ends up being violent or whatever, or puts in a government that is more compliant to U.S. interests, fine. They recognize that allowing for these apps and allowing for that technology and everything, to be in Iran, that it could subvert, the mullahs, right? It could subvert the Iranian government that's there now. They understand it. And it's a reality that's exactly what would likely happen eventually. Or, people would just ignore because, again, every government is an occupying force, is a violent occupying force. Every single government is that. All right. And if you happen to choose to have one of those, or if you happen to support one or vote for it, well, understand what you're voting for. You're voting for a gang. Okay. But just because there is an occupying force that claims to be the government of a geographic area does not mean that the people that live in that geographic area recognize, respect, or follow, or do, what that government says, or that government's very existence. Okay, you can, this is, once you get outside of U.S. history, if you ever bother to like read outside of U.S. history, particularly in, if you start reading, about like the area, the Middle East, and sort of, some of those outlying countries that used to formerly try and be controlled under the USSR and everything, you'll find out about that there were, shall we say, competing governments that were constantly at war with each other. And it wasn't exactly like a civil war. There were just like governments that kind of sat on, that kind of worked on top of each other, weren't always tripping over each other, until one of them would finally, kind of win out for varying reasons. It didn't even have to be a bloody civil war whatsoever. But the point being is that there were people who lived, you could live in your house on, Badaba Street or whatever, and two governments would claim to have the same authority over Badaba Street. And you would choose which one you wanted to, or you'd choose none. That's a valid choice too. But you would choose which government you decided to recognize. And of course, then it becomes a problem of enforcement bodies. Hopefully it doesn't turn into a civil war. But that was a reality happening in so many countries and still happens today. All right. So you don't have to, that's why I say, like, the people of Iran could just fucking ignore, and they really could. They could ignore the mullahs and just live their lives saying, no, fuck, I'll have an iPhone, and they move on, and they do their tiny acts of rebellion as they go along, much like a lot of anarchists that still have principles, even though there aren't many left, will do in the United States. Okay. So anyway, this is really only going to hurt the chances of the Iranian people like achieving any kind of real freedom. But then that's what aspects of the U.S. government are. Well, any government isn't interested in freedom, but some are more akin to it than others, I guess. But aspects of the U.S. government, particularly the Trump administration, obviously is not interested in freedom whatsoever. Okay, and they have doubled down on these sanctions against, against Iran. More so than was happening during the Obama administration. Okay, now, again, that's totally antithetical to any libertarian position that I remember a few years ago. These days, maybe that's different. Now that there's so much support for Trump. But anyway, so I'm all over the place with this. So this is terrible. Now, Apple doing this. Like they could, they also, much like we've been describing how citizens and everything else can kind of ignore the stuff, they could also ignore these sanctions and just kind of let the shit slide, and not care because Google lets it slide. They don't pay any attention to this. And hell, really using Android is a solution in itself anyway, because you can install your own app stores. And so, Iranian people could create their own, or the Iranian people could create their own app stores that are Iranian that would allow for all this to happen. I get it. There's a certain social cachet that comes with having an iPhone, okay, that comes with having Apple devices, and that's probably where the appeal is, for varying Iranian people. But like them using Apple is kind of foolish in the first place, because it is such a closed platform, and because this sort of thing, is exactly what happens. This is what happens when you have closed source. This is what happens when you have closed platforms. Okay. And I blame Apple first. I don't blame the Iranian people for wanting iPhones. Okay. I blame Apple, straight up. But this is, understand in a very real sense, this is a business enacting, a very real foreign policy. That should be concerning to people. And I think a business can choose to whom they want to sell to, no doubt about that. But I would, at some point, maybe I'll cover that case where the guy, told a U.S. citizen that appeared to be of Iranian descent wouldn't sell them an iPad because they thought that was against sanctions. whoa, what the fuck? Again, Apple doesn't have to pay attention to this stuff. Other tech companies don't, but they do. I can't stand that company. Now, are they in the hot seat, as it were, with with the U.S. government? Yep, absolutely. After what happened with San Bernardino and other things, maybe they feel they need to keep their noses extra clean. I could certainly believe that that's what's running through Apple's mind. But yeah, this doesn't make a whole lot of sense, especially when they will bend over fucking backwards to appease the Chinese government. Like, it doesn't even make sense on Apple's part. I'm sure they have their ways of thinking, but whatever it is, like there's no real logic going on here. And yeah, it just shows their willingness, really to play ball with the government, with a multitude of governments, unless it's Iran, which, yeah, that's weird. I do want to point out one of the stories that antiwar.com links to is from Mac Rumors, which is a very popular Apple site, not a political site at all. But I was amazed at this story is just a few days old. I was amazed at some of the comments that were on that story, on that post, on Mac Rumors, not on Antiwar. If these were the comments on antiwar.com, I'd be like, well, yeah, of course, you people get it. But this is on Mac Rumors, and it was amazing. I want to read some of this. Let's see. Sanctions are dumb. They always hit regular people the most and barely do any harm to governments. Then a person responded to that saying, the U.S. knows this. This point is to put the people through so much pain and death that they revolt. The U.S. then funds terrorist groups involved in the revolt they created and ousts the government in favor of one that agrees to giving into corporate America's agenda. Holy shit. Here's another one that's in response. This is the initial thing. So I just don't see how our country-wide sanctions or boycotts or anything of that sort are going to do any good for anyone. The citizens aren't the people who run the country and therefore shouldn't suffer from whatever conflict there is with the government. That being said, considering the iPhone not only isn't sold there, but Apple's services are completely unavailable there either, I think removing these apps is a justifiable action. Now, like, the person's half right? But then this is the response to that. This is amazing. And this is all by different people. Let's be honest here. Our government doesn't give a lick about collateral damage, be it unrest, civilian casualties, or beating a weak country to death because we can't go after ones we aren't sure we can handle. It's sad, but the American electorate frankly doesn't care, because as long as they can pound their chests once in a while and self-absorb their complicity on Sundays, it gives them/us a sense of purpose and strength. Will it change? Probably not. It would help if people would just be honest about the people we see in our mirrors, though. Ooh, I mean, like, and there's a bunch of these where they're just ripping corporate, foreign policy to shreds. And I was like, wow, people are actually kind of getting this. They're starting to see the point that, no, look, all this war shit is nonsense. I was amazed by that. So anyway, I'll put the link in the show notes to the antiwar.com story, if you want to check it out for yourself. But let's move on to another question here. This is a fun one. It has to do with relationships. Let's see. Do you find it difficult or even bother trying to maintain relationships with status types? Okay. So there was an episode that Stephanie and I did for Sovereign Tech patrons called the Relationship Rhombus Show. We might do another one in the future if, we get a bunch more relationship questions. I still have some, but I'll touch on this here. And I kind of touched on it there. And that is, there are, shall we say, ideologies. I mean, I don't think anybody just has one necessarily ideology. And if you're the kind of person, go kill all ideologies, okay, fine. I get you. Okay. You don't have to comment. I know. But I think people have varying ideologies. And I said this on that episode. I said, look, if honestly, I can get along with a statist who is also a hedonist more than I can get along with a libertarian/anarchist, almost across the board. Okay, because I mean, a lot of libertarians particularly are very conservative, and a lot of anarchists hold some very odd ideas, especially if it's not about, them going for personal freedom. And personal freedom really equates to personal happiness, and the goal in life is happiness. Just ask Ayn Rand or, a whole slew of other egoists out there. Yes, Ayn Rand was, in many technical terms, an egoist, even though she got stuff wrong. But anyway, so... I mean, I don't find it. Statists are actually easier to get along with than a lot of libertarians and anarchists, which is kind of sad, right? Because it seems like it shouldn't be that way, but it is. There's a lot of, well, frankly, I mean, a lot of libertarians don't have a sense of humor. I mean, they just don't. And it's a bad one if they do have it. I mean, it's a completely unsympathetic and pathetic sense of humor, and that's a shame. There's a bunch of things. I mean, look, I can get along with. I mean, it's not everybody. There's plenty that I get along with. Obviously, my listenership, I think, are very socially adept people. And you can easily see it in, like the Sovereign Tech Uncensored group on Facebook. I mean, as best as you can see somebody's, social skills and whatever else on Facebook. But part of the problem with a lot of libertarians, a lot of non-statists, how about I just put it that way, is that they're incredibly dogmatic, as to where you can get a lot of statists that are actually very apolitical. They're still statists. If you ask them, does the government need to exist, they'd say yes. But they're generally, they can be very apolitical and just not care, and they just go about their lives, and in that they almost do a better job of being anarchists than a lot of anarchists do. So yeah, I don't find it that difficult. If they're like a really politically charged statist where they're like, oh yeah, well, how about Trump? How about this? How about that? I mean, or how about Clinton, or I don't know, whatever side they happen to be on. I'm on neither. Then it's tough. Yep. Then it is tough to hold on to those relationships. But at the same time, you can hear in what they're saying in their calls for violence, or AKA support of politics. You can hear the needs that are going on. Like, they're concerned. They're worried that their kids are going to die, or they're worried that they're going to lose, their medications, or they're worried about all these different things. And if you can step back and hear that that's what's being said, no, I think you can get along with them fine. As to where, and even that can be easier to deal with than the just absolute dogmatism, really pathetic dogmatism that you end up with a lot of non-statists, where, well, I could give examples, but why? So yeah, no, I don't necessarily see that as difficult, or even bother trying to maintain relationships with statist types. It's not that bad, a lot of times. I mean, it depends, Granted, I don't work go to a 9-to-5 job or whatever. I generally have the fortuitousness of being able to work with like-minded individuals, to me in varying ways. So yeah, no, I mean, it's fine. And you just keep it light, because they're generally, if they're a statist, they might not have done like the really deep work anyway, to where a conversation would ever get to any weight, to a conversation of any weight in the first place. So yeah, but it depends. I mean, but again, though, if they are really, really like harping constantly about politics, all right, so here's an example. Here is an example where I had a hard time. I was spending some time with some of Stephanie's family, and there was an older woman, and she was giving me this whole shtick about how great John McCain was. And yep, I'll admit it. Having to hear, I had a hard time hearing that. I had a hard time listening to that, and it was just such bullshit. Everything that was coming out of that woman's mouth. And I say that generally with respect, because other than her political espousing, she's an incredible woman. This woman that I was talking to. So, but yeah, when it's those kinds of conversations, yep, very hard, very, very hard. So it depends. If they're a more apolitical statist, then no, it's not hard at all. If you never have to talk about politics with them, no, it's not hard at all. But if they want to talk politics a lot, well, yeah, that can be tough. So hope that answered that. I still see it worthwhile to talk to a lot of statists, actually particularly leftists, because I think that they're just a hop, skip, and a jump, many of them, from becoming full-on anarchists. I mean, it just takes a little bit, because they're already questioning all the social mores. Or not all leftists. There's plenty of leftists that are just as ardent statists as anybody, as any conservative or anybody on the right. Okay, but a lot of them, especially the younger ones, I mean, they're in my opinion, they're that close. They're so close to just, okay, yep, no, I'm an anarchist. Okay, they might not become an anarcho-capitalist, but then I'm not interested in converting people to anarcho-capitalists. I'm interested in converting them to individual freedom. Okay, but I'm not going to give them any specific flag that they need to carry. That if you're trying to do that, I mean, I guess everybody has their market their audience that they're going after, but that's not what I'm interested in. I just want people thinking for themselves, and I don't care what prefix they put in front of their names. So, okay, let's get on to another one here. There's one about hard work that I was thinking about. I think I might save that one. Here's a fun one. Let's get into a fun one. What do you think the world would be like if Abrahamic religions were never created? Oh, that's a good one. Wow. So first off, and if you've heard, longtime listeners of Sovereign Tech, if you've heard me say this before, well, I've said this before, but I don't know exactly. I have theories, I have guesses, but I don't know where religion really came from. Okay. Because it doesn't, so I know a lot of people want to make the claim, a lot of anthropologists and archaeologists and whoever else, they want to make the claim that the first religion was something called animism. Okay, which animism means that it's kind of like the Force, where there's a life force in everything. Okay, and then at some point, animism turned into, I mean, literally, there's a life force in everything, in the rock, everything. You could just quote Yoda. Okay, at some point, animism turned into became more of a polytheism, and then the polytheism would eventually become a monotheism. That's the traditional story being told of how religion came into existence. Here's the problem, is that, in my opinion, okay, and it's not just my opinion, there's plenty of anthropologists and archaeologists that would agree with what I'm about to say, is that, for Paleolithic humans, okay, for ancient humans, it is quintessential that they have the firmest of grasps on reality. Now, I'm an atheist, okay, so I don't think there is a God. I don't think there's any spiritual forces. I don't, none of that stuff, okay? If you think that way, you think that way. But, to me, yeah, so for them to have a rock solid grasp on reality, okay, I mean, that's how they had to survive. They couldn't live on if they did anything less. If they started believing in anything bigger than themselves, they would have died. They would never have made it to even remotely something like the Neolithic. They would have never made it to farming. There's so many things that that humanity would have never even started doing if they let loose their grasp on reality in any way. Okay? Especially because there isn't exactly like a shared experience of religion at the time. Now, you can say, well, but people can be religious and still be, genetic scientists and map DNA and create computers and all this wonderful technology, and they could still be Christians or something like that. Well, the thing is, though, is that religions have like this really systematized framework, okay, that they can work off of. That's what I'm saying, is going from 0 of no religion to 1 of religion and not dying off. I don't know exactly what caused that. Like, we don't have the evidence, and I don't think we can ever know. Okay, what brought that? We can't know for certain what brought that on. All right. Now, if you have some kind of system that you're just basing it off of, like Catholicism or something like that, then yeah, it's systematized and you can base off of things from there, and you can continue to make all these developments. It's not like you're going to die if you accept religion. Obviously, that's not true. I'm saying for ancient humans, yes, that was true, is that if you started believing that anything besides yourself was going to take care of you, game over. You are food for wolves or worse. So what my theory, and it's based off of other people's theories, and it's not, necessarily an original thought on my part. I say that, and maybe you people don't need me to say that sort of thing, that it's not just my theory. I think that's important to do because I think there's a lot of people in philosophical, libertarian, anarchist circles who claim that shit is their original ideas when it's not, and that's a problem. Those people need to be called out. And I mean some of the biggest names, and it's fucking annoying as hell. And they didn't come up with it independently. No. They copied, and you can tell. Anyway, so what I think happened is that at some point somebody ate a mushroom. Really, it's this simple. This is my theory. Somebody ate a mushroom. It's not just my theory again, but somebody ate a mushroom, and they were able to describe an experience, a psychedelic experience, psychotropic experience, whatever, that no one had ever thought about before or grasped. And this person was claiming to have seen, I see this happening, and maybe somehow there was this just pure luck that they ended up with a great growing season based upon, the purple wombats that somebody saw from, having a mushroom or whatever. I'm being very broad. You get my point, is that they consumed some kind of psychedelic, some kind of psychotropic, okay, that caused them to see something else, and that maybe had, not for them, either they were just, the rest of the tribe was awed by this person's stories, or there was some fortunate happenstance that occurred based upon what this person who consumed this drug effectively, saw or said. And that's how religion started. That's the only, it had to be something like that. That's my guess. We don't know. We're never going to know, but that's my guess. And I think what happened after that is that the people that consumed, say, those mushrooms or whatever else, ended up becoming a priestly class. And that's not only how religion started, that's how government started. So how that all ends up becoming an Abrahamic religion, how we get to Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, how it all gets to there is obviously thousands of years of, various changes within this religion, various new interpretations as new priests came into power. And I'm not talking about priests of an Abrahamic religion, just priests, the, shamans, the abstract notion within a tribe of, a woo-woo man. They shouldn't be called holy men. They should be called woo-woo men. That, eventually you end up with some form of monotheism. Now, the Abrahamic religions are not the only forms of monotheism. I mean, you have plenty others. You have, Mithra, the Mithraic cults, right, in Rome. There's quite a few. You have what happened with Akhenaten, right, where they ended up worshiping the Aten, the sun, or, well, maybe it wasn't the sun, but anyway, they ended up worshiping one god. Egypt became a monotheistic culture for the reign of Akhenaten. So monotheism happens, and I might argue that Akhenaten is the person that is what brought into, the world, the concept of monotheism. Okay. And also, I would very much argue that Akhenaten, this gets into a lot of historical play, but you have characters like Osarseph, Akhenaten, and all these, which to varying degrees people have attributed to perhaps being Moses himself. Okay. You just kind of have to shift the times, and there's some, the timetables a bit. And I think there are some very interesting theories that exist around that. Like the idea that Solomon didn't actually exist. Solomon was just an Egyptian pharaoh. And, that's why you can't really find much left over of what Solomon, and you really can't. Forget about the Wailing Wall. It's wrong. I'd tell you that whether I believe Solomon existed or not. Okay, there's so much evidence for that. Anyway, that Solomon was originally just an Egyptian pharaoh. And the Queen of Sheba was, his queen. I mean, there's so you can kind of twist stuff to where you get a very different, not twist it in a way that doesn't have evidence bearing upon it, but you end up with a different theory, a different aspect of time. So, what are the Abrahamic religions? I mean, it's tough. If we want to count the religion of Akhenaten, then, well, we saw what happened when that went away. But what clearly happened after Akhenaten is somebody must have, his not his priesthood or whatever, but followers of Akhenaten got away, and they probably ended up started creating the Hebrew religion. They ended up creating Judaism. A proto-Judaism effectively. They would end up creating all. And then everything else would stem out of that. Christianity would come out of that. In fact, there's a great book by Ahmed Osman called Out of Egypt that talks about, and it's like, well, the subtitle for it is the roots of Christianity revealed, saying that even Christianity is just this Egyptian religion, and people don't realize it. So, yeah, if I so this is a tough question. If there were not Abrahamic religions, I think the most direct thing that you would see have changed is you would never, like Rome probably wouldn't have fallen, because I heavily attribute Christianity to the fall of Rome in a negative sense, because when you started telling people that, like the Bible says, that don't put faith or don't invest in things that moth and rust destroy. Okay, meaning don't care about this life that you're living right now, care about the afterlife. I think that led to the downfall of any incredible advancements happening, in civilization at the time, particularly in Rome. I think it also led to the downfall of all of the social advancements that were happening in Rome, including the acceptance of, a multitude of religions. They weren't really harsh towards a lot of that stuff. So, yeah, I mean, if there weren't Abrahamic religions, then we would, it comes down to either, I guess I'll say this part. It comes down to Rome wouldn't have fallen, and so we'd be in outer space right now. Like, just straight up, we'd be in outer space. That wouldn't have happened. And also, if I want to take it back a bit further, and this kind of hits on what a question that I answered a couple of weeks ago, I think, when we were talking about William the Bastard. Egypt, arguably, if oh boy. Okay, so if Akhenaten stayed in power, all right, and that's a huge if. If Akhenaten stayed in power, I think the answer would be the same, or would be similar, maybe advanced by a couple thousand years or something. But the answer would be the same, that we would, we'd be in space, because the Egyptians had an incredible grasp of a lot of varying things, and were, the protoculture to a lot of other concepts. I mean, we were talking about how the Babylonians understood trigonometry so much better than we do, because they're using a different math system. I mean, there's a lot of these things that I think, a lot of stuff that Egypt understood, that I think would have led to us eventually getting to the point where, the earth would just be the seed, and we are the plant sprouting into the rest of the solar system, by now. Okay. So, but you kind of have to understand that part of the problem why I think monotheism has caused so many issues, or why the Abrahamic religions have caused so many issues, is because they, if one accepts the premise, and that's a big if you accept the premise that the Abrahamic religions really started because of Akhenaten, because of the coup in Egypt against Akhenaten, and forcing his, religious practitioners to kind of go underground and hide themselves, which is what I think happened. You end up with Abraham, or with monotheism, but Abrahamic religions perhaps particularly, and Judaism one could call out, initially, because it would be the first one of the bunch, that Judaism becomes this very subversive secret force. Okay, throughout history, even within. And I would definitely argue this, and I've kind of hinted at this at various points within sovereign text history. you have a Judaism that goes throughout history that is like, you have a secret Judaism within Judaism itself. You have like an extra secret kind of class, priestly class or something. I'm not just talking about Levites. Okay. You have this secret Judaism that exists within Judaism, and you know that it does because, and not uninterestingly, when, the northern and southern kingdoms of Judah or of Israel, southern kingdom was Judah, the northern kingdom was Israel. When that happened, when other empires were sweeping in and taking all of that out, we know that some priestly group ran off back to Egypt, which I would say is, the motherland, okay, ran back to Egypt, and on Elephantine Isle built an exact mock-up of the, of a temple to Yahweh. But it wasn't just a temple to Yahweh. It was a temple to a lot of other things too. Okay, but we know that this group ran off and built this incredible, you can still see it today, this incredible Jewish temple. All right, and so, who did that? Who pulled that off? How did they get away? What were they doing going back to Egypt? Isn't that kind of a stupid idea, blah, blah, blah? Not really, because, this is a group that just, there was this secret group within it that knew they had to go and preserve their stuff, and so they ran back home, and they tried to preserve it on Elephantine Isle. And, there's so much history to talk about that, but understand that the Abrahamic religions, and not just Judaism, because eventually it would also become Islam, and eventually it would also become Christianity. Okay, it's need to be subversive. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being subversive and secretive or anything like that. Believe me, I believe quite the opposite. Okay. That has caused so many issues and so many problems because you didn't know it was happening. But the problem is that what they were espousing, what these subversive Abrahamic religious groups were espousing, was antithetical to human freedom. And that's why it's an issue. And it wasn't just antithetical to human freedom. It was antithetical to technology. It was antithetical to life. It was like, yeah, well, here's another Ayn Rand quote for you. It's anti-mind, anti-life, right? Because, it's telling you don't care about this world, care about the next. Don't invest in this world. Maybe say don't care about this world is a misnomer. But don't invest in this world, invest in the next one. And that way of thinking, and look, polytheistic Egypt had similar ways of that thinking as well. But obviously, okay, before somebody brings up that critique, obviously there was the patterns, there was the ability for someone who didn't believe in polytheism to reach the highest seat in the land, effectively, or to hold on to the highest seat in the land and get away with it for a little while, that being Akhenaten or Amenhotep IV, right? Originally. I know there's a lineage involved into how that person got that seat of power, but it worked. People bought it. A lot of people bought into it. It was happening. That the entire religion around Aten was going down, or it was a hot and happening thing. People were accepting of that. Like, oh, okay, no more polytheism. Now, the polytheistic priests, of course, they fucking flipped out because, oh shit, we just lost all of our power. So yeah, they started, scheming and all this different shit. But the point is that there was the capability for religious freedom itself, after fashion within Egypt. So it's not like you could say that, well, Egypt was polytheistic, right? But you had the opportunity, for it to become something else. Obviously, the groundwork was there for that to happen. So yeah. Anyway, I love the historical questions, but they're so huge. You have to talk about so much. You have to cover so much ground to kind of get to the end point. But yeah, it just comes down to I think we would end up we would be in space. Because again, the Abrahamic religions particularly are so concentrating on the afterlife and on not putting real work into this life that, yeah, it's held the entire human species down. It just really has. And it's been so successful because throughout, be it Christians or Jews or whatever, it's always had to be the secretive, subversive force. Okay, not necessarily violent, not necessarily revolutionary. That obviously doesn't bear out well usually because, what happened to the Jews in the first century, go down the list. And certainly Christians were offing themselves throughout the Protestant Reformation and all this. But Yeah. I could go on and on. I really could. So yeah, we would be in space. We would have the Egyptian, and you kind of have to go back. Either Rome wouldn't have fell, or even if you could go back far enough, Egypt would have never fell if the Abrahamic, because what I think brought on the Abrahamic religions again was Akhenaten, but particularly it was his Akhenaten's dethroning and effective assassination that really what brought the Abrahamic religions into existence, because that worshiping the Aten had to go underground. Oh, okay, so hope I answered that. Anyway, I might have rambled, but again, that's such a huge subject. I love the question. It's a lot of fun to talk about, but there's so much, there's so many, and I don't want to stack the deck. I mean, there's so many little things you kind of have to accept, or so many things that you have to talk about, that you have to bring up, to really get to a genuine answer to that. But yeah, that's how I think it would go. We'd be in space right now. So anyway, that's it for this week. For this week's Q&A. Got other stuff coming out. There'll be a new Sex and Science Hour. Got a new Dynamite Sovereign Tech coming up. Can't wait to share that with you. Woo! And thank you so much. Had a lot of patrons up their donation this week because we've lost a few patrons for, I guess, incendiary shit that I say. Well, This is a house for free thinking, baby. And if you don't dig it, hey, okay. So anyway, thank you so much to all those that upped their donation and the new patrons that have come on board. I will see you on the other side.